Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Tanner's Favorite Things. I'm Tanner Knight, and today we've got a blast from the past. Now, if you ever played or recorded music in the mid to late 90s, early 2000s even, then you might be familiar with this. This is the Tascam Portastudio 488 Mark II. And maybe you aren't familiar with this specific one, but there was quite a few options in this Portastudio range. Most of the ones that I was familiar with back in the 90s were the 4-track, and my friends and I did a lot with that little Tascam Portastudio, and it was a really, really advanced unit for its time. I guess the one thing that isn't too advanced is the fact that we have a tape here that's doing the recording. There's not any digital means of capturing the music, but it is a digital preamp in this board, I believe, and that gets recorded analog to tape. So why are we talking about this thing today? Well, it doesn't turn on. This is not my unit. This is a friend's unit, and he kind of gave it to me and said, well, see what you can do with it. Talk about it on your channel, see if you can get some answers from the peanut gallery. So that's you guys. So hopefully you might have an answer for me, but we're going to take a look at this and see if we can't fix it. So this Portastudio is plugged in. It's just got a regular cord here. Nothing too special, nothing too crazy, but it is not detachable. It's right onto the circuit board and fed through the back of the unit. So you cannot take this cord out. It's just what it is. So what's wrong with this specific unit? It actually has an inconsistent turn on when you press the power button. And if I just press the power button, it's hit or miss, and in this case it's a miss. It didn't turn on. I pressed the power button, I have the power plugged in to my pedal board, and just a minute ago I did have it on, so let me just double check that it's plugged all the way in, and it did not turn on. So if I try it again, so if I cycle through this enough times, turning it on and off, it will eventually turn on, but it's a giant pain in the ass, and it's not predictable as to whether it will turn on once, twice, 3 times in a row, 0 times in a row. So I'm at a loss. What could be the problem with this thing? And in the meantime, let's go ahead and take this thing apart and see if we can find any obvious things inside without poking around too much. Because keep in mind, this is a vintage recording piece of equipment, I believe. They stopped making these after the early 2000s. Not entirely sure that date, but that's kind of when we switched over to 100% digital when it comes to recording. So let's go ahead and pop the back off and see what we've got. All right, so you can see this back panel a little bit better. I do have this unplugged, which is advised at all times. We do have a phantom power switch on and off, so that's a 48 volt. There's an RCA out to whatever kind of speaker system you'd like for monitoring, and an under switch and some sort of DVX switch as well. So not too many controls, but there seems to be at least 6 screws holding this back plate on. So let's go ahead and get her off and see what's underneath. So there should be one more screw here, but that one's gone. And then there's one in the middle. And then there should be one more right up front, but that's also missing. So we're missing a couple screws. This back plate has definitely been off before, but let's see if we can see what's inside just by taking care of those screws, or looks like we might have to do these ones too. There's something holding it on in this corner. So I don't quite know what I'm looking for here, but I have a sneaking suspicion it has to do with either the switch itself, there's a small capacitor that is connected to the switch, or it could be the transformer and how the power cable is connected here and it's just loose, but all of that looks really, really good. Capacitor it's not squishy or anything, but I don't know if that's what it would be anyway. So I don't really advise going and opening these up if you don't know what you're doing, by the way. And I kind of firmly sit in the camp of not knowing what I'm doing. But I have an adventurous spirit, so and that's where we're at. But just know that this part of the system is where all of the power lies if you have it plugged in. that's very bad. Don't touch that. Stay away. And then everything else, you know, you should assume that it's no bueno to touch and that you should just keep your hands away from it. Just unplug it if you're going to get inside the shell itself. That's pretty standard and easy to follow. But if you're testing things for capacitance and things like that, then you're going to have to get your voltmeter in there when it's plugged in. So that's something to be aware of. If you are going to use a voltmeter inside here, please be aware that it's really dangerous and you shouldn't be in here if you don't know what you're doing. Okay, just for kicks, while this thing is unplugged, I'm going to start it up and see if we get any action. None so far. All right, folks, one last look at this board. If anybody has any indication as to what might be going on here, I'd love to know. So one thing that I've noticed is that if you leave it turned on, unplug it, and then plug it in, it'll come on. So here we go. You can see that we have the screen is on, but it's not very consistent. So now if I turn it off and turn it on one more time, it doesn't seem to be as effective. But I'll leave it on, unplug it, plug it back in. Well, I guess it didn't do it that time. So it's not consistent in any way, shape, or form. But that's what we're dealing with this Tascam Portastudio 488 Mark II. Let me know if you have any suggestions, and hopefully we can get this thing working again.